The Hall of Judgments fell silent the moment General Aurora Cade stepped into the glowing arena. On all sides, thousands of alien eyes, cold, curious, hostile, watched her as crystalline glyphs pulsed like a heartbeat. At the center sat High Arbiter Zalthorin, his bioluminescent robes flickering with contempt. Aurora raised her hand, activating a hollow of a trembling human child suspended in an alien lab. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Then Aurora's voice cut through the air, steady, deadly quiet. You took one child, and now you face an entire species. The glyphs dimmed. The walls vibrated. Every species in the chamber suddenly understood. This was no ordinary trial. This was humanity drawing a line across the galaxy. If you believe every child deserves protection, hit subscribe. Your support strengthens humanity's voice. The Hall of Judgments pulsed with a cold, bioluminescent glow as General Aurora Cade stepped onto the central platform. Every footstep triggered ripples of violet light beneath the living crystal floor. Thousands of alien spectators leaned forward from the ascending tiers that curved around the chamber like a colossal, luminous amphitheater. Their murmurs drifted through the air, curiosity, hostility, and a thin thread of fear woven together. Aurora stalled at the center and let silence settle. Her posture was rigid, her uniform pristine, her expression unreadable. She waited until the floating glyphs above the court synchronized into stillness. Only then did she raise her head toward the crystalline throne perched high on the eastern dais. High Arbiter Zalthorin Vey observed her with a serene disdain. His elongated form shimmered beneath ornate layers of bioluminescent robes, each strand pulsing with calculated superiority. Behind him, Kareth nobles lined the balconies, their pale eyes gleaming with cold amusement. To them, this was a formality, a human attempting to challenge an empire built on centuries of unpunished dominance. Aurora activated a thin holographic pane. The courtroom dimmed as the image of a trembling human child appeared above her hand, small, frail, breathing shallowly in a sterile containment pod. A collective murmur swept across the gallery. Some aliens recoiled. Others studied the image like a newly discovered organism. Aurora's voice carried through the chamber, low and unwavering. You took one child, and now you face an entire species. The hall froze. Even the crystal walls seemed to still. A dozen translators scrambled to replicate her words across frequencies. By the time the echoes died, the tribunal had shifted from polite curiosity to alarm. Zalthorin's expression thinned, but he did not break composure. "General Cade," he said, voice melodic and faintly mocking, "dramatic declarations may appeal to your kind, but this court requires evidence, not threats." Aurora didn't blink. "You'll have both." She dismissed the hologram and replaced it with a recording from the abduction, grainy shadows moving through a marketplace, a masked figure seizing the child, a brief cry smothered as the figure vanished into a transport pod. Metadata highlighted the route, a direct corridor into Kareth-controlled territory. Gasps echoed through the gallery. Some of the glyph judges brightened in agitation, their crystalline discs rotating rapidly. Aurora turned slightly toward the human delegation seated at the lower bench. A medic stood beside a stasis field containing the rescued child. Their breathing was steadier now, but the faint tremors remained. The sight anchored Aurora's resolve. The child was recovered, she continued, from a facility operating under Kareth jurisdiction. Their injuries were consistent with experimental neuroconditioning. Her gaze swept the chamber. This was not an accident. This was systemic. Zalthorin folded two of his limbs across his torso. Baseless. The Dominion condemns such acts. If a criminal faction acted independently, we will investigate. But humans are notorious for assuming intention where there is none. Aurora met his stare. We follow facts, not assumptions. And yet, Zalthorin replied smoothly, you bring accusations built on stolen data gathered through illegal incursion. One of the glyph judges rotated sharply. A booming tone followed. Evidence is admissible for preliminary review. Continue. Aurora shifted the projection to laboratory signatures. Energy imprints, communication logs, and transport patterns linking the abduction to a research network funded from Kareth account. The nobles whispered uneasily. You presume too much, Zalthorin said. His composure flickered, though only for a heartbeat. We are a vast empire. Not every unlawful action is tied to us. Aurora stepped forward. These accounts are not distant anomalies. They lead directly to your faction. A hush fell over the chamber. Even the ambient hum of the crystal walls seemed to recede. Zalthorin's eyes narrowed, the glow in his robes pulsing erratically before returning to calm. You come here with insults, General. Humanity's anger blinds you. Aurora's reply was steady. Humanity's anger is controlled. Our resolve is deliberate. And our patience is limited. The presiding judge raised 3 crystalline limbs. This tribunal acknowledges the gravity of the accusation. Evidence will be examined. Testimonies will be heard. Proceedings will continue. Aurora inclined her head. Thank you. But before she could retreat to her bench, a flash of memory surged, unbidden and sharp. A collapsing colony station. Smoke-filled corridors. Her son's small hand slipping from her grip as a blast door slammed shut. The Kareth ship she never reached in time. The body she never recovered. She steadied herself. The past did not own her. It fueled her. Returning to the present, Aurora spoke one final sentence to the court. We are here because every child deserves safety. If that principle fails today, the consequences will not fade quietly. The judge accepted her statement and adjourned for recess. The crystal floor shifted into a neutral, dim tone as officials dissolved the holograms. Aurora stepped back from the platform, descending a narrow walkway toward her delegation. Human officers met her with grim respect. One whispered, "You hit harder than expected." Aurora exhaled slowly. They needed clarity. Her gaze returned to the stasis field. The child's fingers twitched, barely visible beneath the gentle glow. They had survived horrors no child should endure. Their presence here was a living accusation. Aurora stood quietly for a moment, letting her heartbeat settle. The hall, though half-emptied, still vibrated with tension. Somewhere above, Kareth nobles whispered strategies to shield their dominion. Others plotted denunciations. Nothing about the coming trial would be simple. But Aurora had not come for simplicity. She had come for truth, and justice, and a promise she made long ago on a ruined colony station. No more, she whispered to herself. When she lifted her head again, her eyes burned with unwavering purpose. Whatever the Dominion believed, whatever facade Zalthorin maintained, the tide had already shifted. Humanity was awake, and it had drawn its line. The Hall of Judgments resumed with a sharp rise in luminescent intensity, as if the crystal walls sensed the tension they were about to contain. When Aurora returned to the central platform, the gallery was packed again. More spectators had arrived, delegates from species rarely seen in political trials. Word of the accusation had spread like wildfire. The presiding judge rotated slowly, signaling the continuation. The Terran delegation may proceed. Aurora stepped forward. I call the first witness. A small figure shuffled from the lower corridor, a Lyran janitor, thin and translucent, with delicate limbs that trembled under the gaze of the court. They climbed onto the witness pedestal, avoiding Zalthorin's piercing stare. Aurora softened her tone. State your name and occupation. Rayla, they whispered, voice vibrating like struck glass. Maintenance worker at Port Erection. Aurora nodded. Rayla, did you witness the abduction of the human child? Rayla hesitated, then lifted a trembling limb. I saw officers wearing Kareth insignia take the small one. I knew their colors. I knew their stride. Their voice cracked. It wasn't the first time. Whispers rippled across the chamber. Aurora leaned closer. Explain. Rayla swallowed, bioluminescent veins flickering. Other juveniles disappeared. Different species. No investigations. No concern. They claimed the children were relocated for assessment. But none returned. Zalthorin rose sharply. Objection. This witness provides hearsay and emotional distortions. Aurora didn't flinch. The witness is testifying based on personal observation. The court will evaluate credibility. The judge signaled for Rayla to continue. Rayla wrapped their arms around themselves. I saw the transport ship. I followed it from a distance. It went through Gate 6, restricted to Kareth Research Division staff. They paused, shaking. I wanted to report it, but workers like me are not believed. Aurora gave a steady nod. Thank you for your courage. Rayla stepped down, trembling but relieved. Zalthorin rose with agitated finesse. This witness admits to fear, bias, and limited understanding. The Lyran are known for fragile memory fidelity. Their testimony is unreliable. Aurora folded her hands behind her back. Then let's rely on something more durable than memory. She activated a projection. The chamber went silent as a classified mission feed appeared. Task Force Dawnbreak infiltrating a sterile compound. Armored humans moved with precision through corridors carved from cold metal and glowing vein lines. Unknown juveniles floated in containment pods, some conscious, some unconscious, all terrified. Gasps erupted. Aurora narrated calmly. This facility was found deep within Kareth-controlled space. The abducted child was located here. These markings, she zoomed in, matched Dominion Research Division symbols. The footage shifted to the moment the human child was found curled inside a pod, shivering, vital signs unstable. A sharp exhale swept the audience. Zalthorin lifted his chin. This evidence was acquired illegally. Human soldiers trespassed into our sovereign territory. The judge signaled analysis glyph. The crystal discs rotated, scanning the feed for authenticity. After a tense pause, the ruling tone chimed. Authenticity verified. The crowd erupted again. Aurora spoke over the noise. We acted because official inquiries were ignored for cycles. The Dominion stalled every request, denied every lead, and buried every complaint. Zalthorin stepped forward, robes dimming with irritation. You claim moral superiority, yet you violate borders for your own ends. You speak of justice but act with arrogance. Aurora held his gaze. We acted to save a child. You acted to hide your crimes. The hall shook with murmurs. Several ambassadors exchanged uneasy glances. Aurora continued, shifting the hologram to a data stream filled with financial transfers. These accounts funded the facility. And these, she highlighted names, belong to your political faction, High Arbiter. For the first time, Zalthorin's composure faltered. The glow beneath his robes flickered in chaotic patterns. He regained control quickly. Fabrications. Humans are adept at forging digital trails. Aurora tapped a final sequence. Cross-referenced with Dominion registries. Verified by neutral analysts. These transfers are real. The judge scanned the projections. Financial connections confirmed. The shock wave of reaction rippled through the chamber. Kareth nobles whispered fiercely. Some glared at Zalthorin, others at Aurora. Zalthorin raised his voice. Even if true, this does not prove Imperial sanction. Rogue factions exist everywhere. Aurora's tone stayed clinical. Your faction controls 3 research districts, including the one where the child was found. The judge paused, crystalline limbs folding inward. The evidence requires deeper examination. Testimonies will continue. Aurora inclined her head and returned to her bench, but she sensed the rising turbulence. She had cracked the Dominion's armor, barely, but the court was still far from convinced. The Kareth were masters of evasion, politically insulated by centuries of dominance. They would not fall easily. A human officer leaned toward her. They're rattled. Aurora exhaled slowly. They haven't broken yet. Her gaze drifted to the stasis field containing the child. Their breathing was steadier now, but their brow tightened in unconscious fear. The slightest tremor ran through their fingers. Aurora clenched her jaw. She remembered a faint hand slipping from hers years ago on a burning station. She had failed once. She would not fail again. The presiding judge struck the crystal floor with a resonant pulse, drawing attention. This tribunal will recess for 40 units. The Dominion must prepare a formal rebuttal. The Terran delegation may assemble additional evidence. The walls dimmed to a softer hue as the glyphs extinguished one by one. Aurora remained standing for a moment, absorbing the shifting atmosphere. The Kareth nobles were already circling Zalthorin, whispering desperation masked as strategy. Other species lingered, exchanging glances heavy with fear and hope. The truth was out, but truth alone never changed empires. Aurora walked toward the stasis field. The medic bowed their head. "General, the child is stable. Their neural responses show gradual improvement." Aurora placed a hand against the transparent barrier. "They don't need to testify. Their existence testifies enough." The medic nodded. "Do you believe the court will move toward justice?" Aurora looked back at the grand crystalline chamber. "Justice isn't something the Dominion gives. It's something the galaxy demands." She straightened her uniform. The recess was temporary. The battle was only beginning. Zalthorin would return with new tactics: legal, political, psychological. The Dominion still held influence over half the court. But Aurora had something stronger. A cause the galaxy had ignored for too long. A child harmed and rescued. A wound shared by many species. And beneath it all, a vow sharpened over decades of loss. She whispered to herself, steady and resolute, "This time, they answer to all of us." The Hall of Judgments brightened again as the court reconvened, its crystal walls reflecting a sharper, almost confrontational light. Delegates filled every tier. Their murmurs carried anticipation and unease. Not a single spectator doubted that the next phase would determine the direction of the entire trial. The presiding judge rotated its crystalline limbs. "Terran delegation, the court requires clarification. Why did humanity conduct a covert military incursion rather than continue diplomatic channels?" The question had weight. It wasn't merely procedural. It challenged humanity's right to stand here without guilt. Aurora stepped forward. Because diplomacy failed for 7 consecutive cycles. She projected a sequence of blocked transmission logs, formal inquiries, humanitarian requests, treaty petitions, each ignored or redirected by Dominion officials. Every path we pursued was delayed, dismissed, or erased. Meanwhile, children continued disappearing. Zalthorin lifted his chin. "Your impatience does not justify illegal action." Aurora kept her tone level. "Saving lives is not impatience. It is responsibility." But she wasn't done. With a gesture, she replaced the logs with a recording taken months earlier. The image displayed a dim, circular chamber where representatives from smaller species, Trellian, Vescari, Neluan, sat hunched in fear. Their silhouettes flickered as they spoke. A Trellian envoy whispered, "If we protest, the Dominion will punish us. We cannot lose more children." A Neluan representative added, "You humans protect your own. We have no one. Please help us." The chamber watched in stunned silence. Aurora narrated softly, "These worlds begged us for aid. They had no fleets, no political weight, no recourse. They came to humanity because we listen when children cry." The judge's glow dimmed as it absorbed the statement. Zalthorin seized the moment. "There. It is laid bare. Humanity seeks to crown itself moral protector of the galaxy. You interfere where you are not wanted, using sentiment to justify power grabs." Aurora turned to him, the faint edge of steel sharpening her voice. "Power grabs? You abduct children. You experiment on them. And when caught, you blame their rescuers." The hall trembled with murmurs. Zalthorin spread his limbs with aristocratic grace. "Children are resources until maturity. This is understood across countless cultures." Aurora stepped closer to the dais. Not in ours. And not in those who stand with us. The philosophical divide sharpened like a blade. Aurora continued, a civilization is measured by how it treats its most vulnerable, not by how efficiently it exploits them. Zalthorin scoffed lightly. Emotional theatrics. Humans elevate infants to sacred icons, distorting logic with sentiment. Sentiment, Aurora replied, is why we still have a future. The judge transmitted a resonant pulse, signaling the transition to witness examination. Aurora turned to the human medic. Wake the child briefly. The medic hesitated. General, their neural balance is fragile. Aurora nodded. Only a moment. No pain. No pressure. The stasis field dimmed slightly, revealing the child's eyes fluttering open. They looked small under the court's towering architecture, almost swallowed by the magnitude of the moment. Aurora approached gently. You're safe. Speak only what you remember. The child's voice was faint but clear. They made me answer questions. If I got them wrong, they changed the lights. It hurt. They said humans feel too strongly. They wanted to see how much. A low, horrified gasp spread across the chamber. Aurora glanced upward. This is the cost of your research, Arbiter. Zalthorin straightened, irritation rippling beneath his robes. This testimony is compromised. The child is traumatized and lacks full perception. Aurora stepped between him and the child. You fear their truth because it shatters your narrative. The judge intervened. The witness may rest. The medic reactivated the stasis field. The child relaxed, drifting back into a protective sleep. Something shifted in the room. Species who had been neutral leaned forward, expressions darkening. Some Kareth nobles looked away, unwilling to meet the judgment in other delegates' eyes. Aurora saw the shift, but so did Zalthorin. And he struck. Enough, he announced, stepping fully into the light. If we are to judge the Dominion, then we must also judge the Terran Coalition. And I present evidence that humanity, too, has committed atrocities. He projected a classified archive, old and grainy, depicting early human military units during the volatile first decades of interstellar expansion. Human operatives performing unauthorized experiments on captured combatants during what became known as the Ashfall conflict. A ripple of shock surged through the hall. Aurora's officers stiffened. Delegates whispered urgently. The judge emitted a pulse warning of rising emotional volatility. Zalthorin's voice dripped with triumph. Behold humanity's moral hypocrisy. You claim to defend children, yet your history is soaked in violence. You experimented on prisoners. You executed non-combatants. You! Aurora raised a hand, silencing him without force, only presence. She stared at the footage. She didn't deny it. She didn't flinch. Then she turned to the court. Yes, she said quietly. This happened. The gallery froze. Aurora's gaze remained steady. During our early expansion, some human factions committed unforgivable acts. They violated ethics, law, and decency. And we paid a price. Those responsible were tried, imprisoned, or executed. We reformed our laws so it would never happen again. Her voice deepened with conviction. We do not erase our sins. We hold them up so we never repeat them. Quiet fell, heavier than anything since the trial began. Aurora stepped toward the judge. This evidence does not absolve the Dominion. It proves the opposite. Humanity confronted its monsters. The Kareth conceal theirs. She let that truth settle like a blade. But the chamber remained in tension. The Arbiter's attack had done damage, not to the facts, but to the emotional balance of the trial. Delegates now waited, conflicted, uncertain, needing more. The judge turned its glowing facets toward Aurora. General Cade, the court acknowledges your admission. However, the implications of this historical evidence must be addressed. How does humanity claim the moral authority to challenge another civilization? Aurora inhaled slowly. Everyone leaned forward. The weight of the galaxy rested on her next words. But she didn't speak yet. She simply held the court's gaze, calm, unbroken, unafraid. And the chapter ends with the chamber suspended in breathless anticipation. Aurora allowed the silence to stretch across the crystalline chamber. The weight of every eye, human, alien, hostile, hopeful, pressed upon her, but she welcomed it. Silence, properly wielded, could cut deeper than any accusation. Only when the stillness reached a fragile breaking point did she speak. Humanity does not claim moral authority, she said evenly. We claim responsibility. Her words glided through the air, unhurried, unforced. We confronted our past. We punished our own. We built laws that bind even our highest commanders. That is why we stand here today, not to posture, but to prevent suffering we once failed to stop. She turned toward Zalthorin. Can the Dominion say the same? Zalthorin's posture stiffened. Our research advances the galaxy. We refine understanding. Aurora lifted her hand, stopping him without raising her voice. You justify cruelty by calling it progress. But the galaxy is no longer blind. She shifted the projection to a simple symbol, a recorded timestamp from the rescue mission, one that matched the abduction of another missing juvenile from a Trellian colony. Then another from a Neluan station. Then one from a Veskari moon. The dates overlap. The pattern was irrefutable. This is not isolated, Aurora continued. This is a network. A system built on silence, fear, and children treated as tools. The hall erupted with murmurs, now louder, angrier, tinged with revulsion. Zalthorin tried to regain control. These disappearances are tragic but coincide. He stopped. Dozens of ambassadors had risen from their seat. A Trellian elder spoke first, their thin antennae trembling. 27 of our young vanished over 3 cycles. We feared the Dominion too much to speak. A Neluan representative stepped forward, voice quivering with restrained fury. We found energy traces matching Kareth vessels outside our nurseries. A Veskari warrior lifted her spear to the air. We suspected the truth. But alone, we are prey. The hall brightened as more delegates stood, species Aurora had never met, others she barely recognized. Some carried portraits of missing young. Some carried only memories. Aurora quietly stepped aside, letting them stand. This wasn't just humanity's case anymore. A small Lyran envoy climbed onto their bench and lifted a trembling limb. We thought no one cared for our small ones, until the humans came. A hush fell. The presiding judge adjusted its facets, casting refracted beams across the hall. The Dominion's political armor cracked under the collective testimony. Even some Kareth nobles looked stricken, as if witnessing the unraveling of a long-protected lie. Aurora walked forward again, not as an accuser, but as the voice of a rising chorus. We did not bring fleets, she said softly. We brought truth, and those who suffered in silence. Her gaze swept the chamber. You ask how humanity dares to stand here. We stand because the smallest among us cannot. Then her voice sharpened with a controlled intensity. If this court refuses to defend children, any children, then understand the consequence. Those who stand behind me will no longer appeal to law. They will appeal to survival. Zalthorin recoiled. You threaten war. Aurora shook her head once. I state reality. If the Dominion continues to treat children as resources, then every species harmed by your actions will defend their young as fiercely as humans do. She took a single step closer to the dais, her presence steady as iron. You took one child. Now you face every civilization that remembers what it means to protect its future. The hall vibrated, emotion, fear, realization. Zalthorin tried to reassert himself. You presume solidarity where there is none. These species are weak. Their alliances will crumble under pressure. Humanity cannot shield them all. Aurora turned slightly, allowing the gallery to see the ambassadors who stood behind her. We are not alone. And neither are they. Zalthorin released a brittle laugh. You think unity can be forged from sentiment? The galaxy is ruled by power. Aurora's reply was calm, but the force beneath it made the air tremble. You misunderstand power. Real power is choosing who you become after your darkest mistakes. We learned. We changed. And now we refuse to let your empire drag others into the same darkness. The presiding judge struck the floor with a resonant pulse. This tribunal has heard sufficient evidence. The hall stilled. Every species held its breath. After reviewing testimony, reviewing verified data, and acknowledging the joint declarations presented today, the court issues the following judgment. Zalthoran's hands tightened on his robes. The Kareth Dominion is found responsible for systemic abductions and unlawful experimentation on juveniles from multiple member species. A shockwave rippled across the chamber. Aurora kept her expression neutral, but her pulse quickened. The Dominion will relinquish control of all facilities implicated in this network. Reparations will be paid to affected species. All responsible administrators shall be removed from power and remanded to a neutral tribunal for sentencing. A murmur of relief spread. Then the judge glowed brighter. Additionally, effective immediately, a new interstellar mandate is established. A holographic seal burned into existence above the court. Charter of juvenile sanctity: harm one child from any signatory species, and you face all of them. The hall erupted, not in chaos but in cathartic release. Delegates wept. Others embraced. Some simply stood in stunned disbelief, as though the galaxy had shifted beneath their feet. Zalthoran's composure finally shattered. You cannot do this. The Dominion will never accept. The judge silenced him with a crystalline pulse. The Dominion has no choice. Law has spoken, and the galaxy stands united. Guards approached. Zalthoran's final glare at Aurora was not victorious, it was afraid. Aurora watched him escorted away, his power stripped, his influence extinguished. She did not gloat. Justice was not vengeance. She stepped from the platform and approached the stasis field. The child rested peacefully, unaware of the change their suffering had ignited. The medic whispered, "General, it's over." Aurora placed her palm on the barrier, her voice barely above breath. "No. It's beginning." She stepped back and looked at the gathered species, former strangers now bound by shared purpose. "Protect your children," she said quietly. "All of them." Word of the verdict traveled faster than any ship. Across colonies and star systems, parents and guardians whispered the same name. The human general who told an empire, "You took one child and now you face us all." The verdict had echoed across the galaxy like a shockwave, but its aftershocks were only beginning. In the days following the tribunal, the Kareth capital shifted from arrogance to stunned silence. Streets once buzzing with prideful citizens now held muted whispers, guarded glances, and the sharp awareness that their empire had been forced to kneel, publicly, undeniably. General Aurora Cade walked through a quiet corridor inside the neutral diplomatic compound assigned to the Terran coalition. The crystalline walls here did not glow with judgment. Their light was gentler, meant for reflection rather than confrontation. Behind her, the sound of steady, rhythmic footsteps followed. Commander Reelan, her longtime strategist and one of the few people allowed to read her face clearly. "You didn't sleep," Reelan said gently. Aurora didn't slow. There was too much to finish. Reelan gave her a sidelong look. "You saved a child, overturned an empire's practices, and unified half the Concord. It's acceptable to breathe." Aurora replied softly, "Breathing comes later." They reached the medical wing where the rescued child, now stable outside the stasis field, rested in a quiet recovery chamber. A Neluan medic sat nearby, documenting neural patterns. Their delicate fins fluttered in calm waves. Aurora paused at the doorway. The child looked smaller without the glow of the stasis field, fragile but alive in a way they hadn't been in the tribunal. A faint smile appeared at the sight of Aurora. "You came back," the child whispered. Aurora sat beside the bed. "I told you I would." The child's fingers brushed the sheets nervously. Are they gone? The ones who hurt me? Aurora hesitated, not from doubt, but from the complexity of truth. Some are. Others will be. And the galaxy now knows what they did. The child nodded slowly, accepting the answer with a weight far beyond their years. Reland stepped forward. General, the ambassadors are gathering. They want to formalize the joint coalition before the Dominion regroups. Aurora rose. I'll meet them. She gave the child one last reassuring look. Rest. There's an entire galaxy waiting to make sure this never happens again. The child's eyes softened. Thank you for coming. Aurora didn't trust her voice, so she simply nodded and stepped away. The council chamber was filled with delegates, Trellian elders, Veskari warriors, Neluan healers, Lyran archivists, and even several Kareth dissidents who had chosen conscience over loyalty. A dozen holographic banners floated overhead, representing species who had joined the newly proposed alliance. At the center of the room stood Ambassador Sora Valen, humanity's principal diplomat. General Cade, she greeted warmly. Perfect timing. The assembly awaits your guidance. Aurora raised an eyebrow. My guidance? This charter belongs to all of you. Sora smiled. You may not want the spotlight, but you lit the path. They trust you. Aurora exhaled once, steadying herself. She walked to the central table, where the Charter of Juvenile Sanctity hologram hovered, still glowing from its creation during the tribunal. The Trellian elder spoke first. We wish to expand the Charter. Not only punish those who harm children, but create shared protection networks, early warning systems, emergency shelters, resources we never dared dream of. A Veskari warrior stepped forward, armor clinking softly. We fight well, but not always wisely. We want human advisors. Your people know how to build defenses that protect instead of oppress. Aurora listened carefully. This, cooperation over fear, was the future she had hoped might emerge. But the meeting shifted as a timid voice rose from the corner. A Kareth scholar stood alone, robes dim and uncertain. General Cade, I must speak. The room tensed. The scholar bowed deeply. I am Verex, former historian for the Dominion. I have studied our empire's past. This tribunal, it is not the first time we ignored warnings. We have lost our way. Some of us wish to change. A Veskari warrior bristled. And why should we believe you? Verex's eyes dimmed. Because I brought something. They projected a map. Dark, sprawling networks of older research routes, some long abandoned, others recently reactivated without official sanction. Aurora's expression hardened. These didn't appear in the tribunal's evidence. Why? Verex whispered. Because the Dominion did not trust even its own courts. These were classified deeper than the Arbiter's faction. There are more facilities, some still operational. A cold wave passed through the room. Sora stepped forward. General. Aurora studied the map, jaw tightening. We shut down one network. But the rot spreads farther. The Trellian elder trembled. More children. Verex nodded helplessly. The lower sectors, they take from species too small to report losses. Aurora's pulse sharpened. The victory at the tribunal had been monumental, but incomplete. She faced the assembly. We cannot rely on the Dominion to fix this from within. The coalition must act before others disappear. Reland whispered behind her, You know what this means. Aurora nodded slowly. The tribunal ended one war. But the next mission begins now. She addressed the full assembly. We will not invade. We will not conquer. We will rescue. Every child, from every species, until no shadow remains for the Dominion to hide in. The old hall filled with a rising energy. Fear, hope, determination twisted into one powerful momentum. The Neluan healer stepped forward, placing a small crystal on the table. This is our pledge. Our medics will join. The Veskari warrior slammed her spear into the ground. Our soldiers stand ready. The Lyran envoy lifted a trembling limb. Our scouts know hidden passages. We will guide your teams. Even Varex bowed. And I will show you the places my people tried to bury. Aurora nodded slowly, accepting the weight placed before her. Then we begin. The coalition sealed their pact with a resonance that rippled through the entire compound. Not war, purpose. A mission born not from vengeance, but from unity. As the delegates dispersed, Sora approached Aurora quietly. Do you think the galaxy is ready for this? Aurora looked toward the medical wing, where a single child slept safely for the first time in weeks. It doesn't matter if the galaxy is ready, she said. Children don't get to choose the world they're born into. It's our job to shape it for them. And with that, she turned toward the war room, not to destroy an empire, but to save those still waiting in the dark.